Thank you so much for being here. We're going to hold on for just a little while as more people join, but we're doing a special edition of not only R-rated Christianity, but Sidebar. And of course, Nico LaHood, the former Bexar County DA, Georgia Rougeau, who has everything in his background, including a couple of doctorates.
No, not a couple of doctorates.
Okay.
Close, but no cigar. Go ahead.
Not yet. And Willie Ng.
Yes.
What is your background? I mean, I've met you before, but what are you doing now? What have you done in the past, and why are you here?
I don't know why I'm here. So I can answer that question for the sake of transparency. Retired law enforcement for 30 years now. So I worked with SAPD. I was assigned to the Secret Service Joint Task Force for just shy of 8 years. Worked as a chief investigator at the district attorney's office, running my own business now, a security firm that I've had since 2003, and should be complete with my PhD in organizational leadership this December.
There's the PhD again right there. Well, it's good that you're here because the Secret Service seems to be one of the top questions that people are asking about. Where were they? What happened? How did the president get shot, even if it was the tip of his ear? I hate to bring up all the conspiracy theories, but when I saw him get shot and go down by himself with no Secret Service jumping on top of him until after he already went down, I was like, that seems odd. Like, why did they not know about the guy? I mean, there's a million questions, but did that seem normal to you?
To be honest with you, if you actually look at it by seconds, it was about 3 seconds that it took the agents to get on top of him. He responded very well. Of course, the presidents are trained also as well. People don't know that. Presidents are trained during critical incidents such as that one the other day, how to respond. And he did exactly what he's supposed to do. As soon as he saw a movement running towards him, he knew he was going to hit the ground. Otherwise, what would happen? They would knock him to the ground.
Okay.
With force. And there's been presidents that have been injured that way. Broken collarbone, broken elbows, arms.
Ribs.
By being knocked down, ribs especially, by being knocked down and everyone jumping on top. So he was very fortunate that he knew exactly what to do, and he did what he was trained to do as well.
Yeah, and Karen, so what I think we're going to try to accomplish today with everyone here is what we tried to do last night when we had some technical difficulties. Sadly, you're fired, and Jeff's back home, so we're good. But there was a lot of things going on last night. But is look at a couple of things. How did we get here as a nation? How could this happen? Yeah. I think the political narratives need to be discussed, and what's behind them, and where does it go from here. Politics, we have to talk about politics in both parties and what the narratives have been coming from elected officials, then people on all these Twitter and Instagram, and some of the vile vitriol that's been out there, which is unfortunate, but we need to talk about that. Then an investigation. I'm gonna brag about my brother here. Willie is a dear friend of mine, so I am biased, but I'm still objective, and we can disagree, but like George and I are close, Willie and I are too. So Willie worked, like you said, with the Secret Service for a little under 8 years on a joint task force through SAPD, but he did the training, the briefings. And so I brought him on when I was district attorney as chief investigator, and he served well. And so we had a wonderful relationship with our federal partners because of Willie, because of the office, but Willie was a good conduit for that. And so we did a lot of training together and a lot of briefings together, both federal and state. But also there's an investigation aspect to this. And so I think we can analyze it from what would we look for, what kind of questions should we ask. I mean, you've heard it all. Everyone has a different opinion about Secret Service. I still want to hear from Willie. We have not talked about what we're going to talk about tonight. Who the hell knows where we're going to go? We're just going to go wherever the conversation leads us. But there's people that have praised the Secret Service. There's people that have criticized them. I've had questions. You know me. Saulo and other friends of ours, they're real quick to jump on stuff. People like Candace Owens are really quick to jump on stuff. She's been right about a lot of things. I think she's been off on some things as well. Everybody's entitled to be wrong, including myself. But I'm just trained in my profession as serving as a prosecutor, but also as a defense attorney, just to pause and to follow the evidence wherever it leads us. I believe in due process. That means fundamental fair play. Everyone deserves it, not just people I like. And so, because I believe in the Constitution. And so I've always paused. I think there's things that make you go, and you need to ask questions and explore them. And I think we know more today than we did yesterday. We still don't know. There's a hell of a lot more we need to know. So I think that's where kind of the conversation is going to go tonight. I don't know if Jeff is going to be monitoring questions, because I do want to address if people have questions or comments that we can address going forward. And Karen, I really, you're the interviewer here today, kind of orchestrate it like you do on Saturday mornings. We're the circus and you're the conductor.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, I feel like I'm a part of the circus every time I'm with you guys. But
Is that a
tonight,
thanks, I think?
compliment?
no, it's
I have no
not.
idea.
But I want, Sandra. Hello, Sandra. Georgia's sister's here, and she always reminds me, and I always forget to do it. But if you're watching right now, please share and like this video, because the more people that we have in our viewership, the more people can comment and help us keep the conversation going. So please share and like on all platforms, anyone that you're on. So the Secret Service, I mean, that's the obvious question. How you saw it firsthand. If you didn't see it live, you saw it, Willie, 100 times over and over. I mean, of course people are going to criticize. The president was shot. I mean, we've seen other presidents shot. We saw Reagan shot,
Yeah.
but how does that even happen?
So Willie, talk about the base package concept over the initial team that goes out before. So you have a base package initial team, you have a secondary team, you have the people around the president that are not set up to actually shoot back. They're really there for a shield. Then you have the snipers, as people have heard now, and there's some controversy of whether a sniper, and we can talk about that, George, if you want to, of whether they said what they said, that thing that's been circling around, and we'll talk about that. But can you give an overview? I mean, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of strategy to the Secret Service,
so
right?
it's very methodical, right? I mean, days and sometimes even weeks before the visit even occurs, there's a briefing, and everyone's coming to the table. This is a collaborative effort, right? It's not just Secret Service. There's no way the Secret Service can do a visit alone. They need local law enforcement for the motorcade, right? They need local law enforcement to understand routes. They create routes. We already know the route that we're going to take from the airport when they come in to wherever they're going, the venue. And we already know from the venue after, we're going to take a different route back to the airport. We also know hospitals. Where are the hospitals at on this route? Hospitals are notified on this route that in the event something happens during this route, this is where we're going to go. So this is very methodical. It's very planned out. And the overall responsibility to any of these visits is going to be your special agent in charge, which is your local SAC. Every city, I shouldn't say every city, every region, every district has a field office. So San Antonio field office is on San Pedro in 410 area. So when there's visits in San Antonio, that SAC, special agent in charge, is responsible, completely and totally responsible. So we have our brief, we talk about routes, we talk about hospitals, we talk about the resources that we have available to us for that event. And then we talk about, obviously, the venue. The venue is visited by what's supposed to be visited by the SAC and the team, the Secret Service team. And the SAC receives the report. This is an outline of how logistically we're going to execute this visit. And the SAC visits the site and checks off on it. So one of the questions that have been asked to me is, well, who's responsible for this?
How did a guy get up on a roof with an AR-15?
Well, that's
a question. That's a legit question,
That's a
Karen.
question. That is a question. One of the questions was who's responsible, and that question is the San Antonio. Not San Antonio. I'm sorry. It's going to be your SAC, your special agent in charge in that area. So again, very methodical, very planned out.
I have a follow-up question because I don't want to lose track of what you're saying.
Go ahead.
So, because we don't have to, we'd be here 5 hours to weed through all the conspiracy bullshit that we're reading.
And
There's a
there
lot
will
of it.
be lots.
There's a lot of it.
There already
By the way,
is, yeah.
I know Willie as well. He's very grounded. So this is the guy that I want to ask these questions to. In particular, of all the stuff you read, can you think of any, what's your top one question that you think is a legitimate question? My question yesterday, just off the cuff, was, hey, what's with having basically an unobstructed line of view
Yeah.
to a podium
Yeah.
from a roof? Now, maybe that's not an accurate question because I'm assuming some things that aren't true. But from your standpoint, is there anything that you think it's a burning question based on all your experience that you think is a legitimate question here that may cast doubt on the level of preparedness that you're suggesting should have happened?
The question I have immediately
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily the line of sight, because different venues in different cities have multiple buildings that have line of sight. It's why wasn't that building covered appropriately?
Okay.
And so they are saying that it's not within, it wasn't within the perimeter.
I heard that.
Well, guess what? Then when you look at a site like that, a venue, then if you have to expand your perimeter, you expand your perimeter to cover a potential threat, right?
Brother, you know what I'm going to ask next. What is an is there a yardage?
No, that's just it. So if we go to the venue, let's just say it's outside the Alamo Dome, and we look at the curb line of the Alamo Dome, well, that's our perimeter. Anything beyond that, it's defined on the agent who's assessing the
But
visit.
shouldn't it be how far a bullet can travel?
Not necessarily, because then
So Karen, I'm sorry, Willie.
Go ahead.
So there's a term. It's called sanitize. As long as you sanitize a potential threat area, then you're cool. That's either stopping people from entering an area or having coverage on the roof or
Got
the
it.
area of that area. So that question, what was that area sanitized?
So that's the thing we all want to know, right? Especially me, and we won't know until we get the report. And that's if we even see the report.
That's what I keep on saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Right. That's it. But so I talked to a couple of congressmen this afternoon, and they are going to have a congressional hearing. They're going to push this, and they're going to want answers. And it's going to be televised just like any other.
The House Oversight Committee, I think Chairman James Comer has already asked for an audience with the head of the Secret Service.
Right.
And that's been posted. So that's absolutely right. But I'm sorry, man, I don't mean to keep harping on this. I just got to know. We don't have an unlimited number of weapons that can perform that job, do we? I mean, so why wouldn't we say, hey, there's a set number of weapons that can do this. We know that there's a range of yardage that they can reach. Like in this case, it wasn't that much, was it, Willie? It was what, 100 yards?
140 yards.
100, it was like just shy of 140.
Yeah, okay, because I heard 100, 200, 300 yards, and when you start getting
But
300
you
yards,
got to
that's
think.
crazy.
So George, when you think about there are a lot of weapons. Any deer rifle, any high capacity long rifle. This was a 223
could deliver
or
a shot with that
5.56.
kind of precision within 140 yards.
An amateur can hit that
Yes.
shot with the right optics. You don't have to be. I mean, a 140-yard shot with a high capacity long rifle and the right optic. It really, it's not a hard shot.
Which brings us right back to that seems like a really close perimeter to say, well, it's outside of our perimeter.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So So these are all the questions that even I have. Right. Number one, did they clear the building? If they cleared the building, then why didn't they secure the building? If they did secure the building, how did they secure the building? Because there's different ways of doing it. One, you could have a roving where they're responsible for that area, and others they rove, or one, they're stationary. So was there a stationary? Was it roving? And if it was roving, why in the heck would you do a roving in a building?
We don't
that's
even know how he
140?
got up there, do we, Willie? We don't know if he came from the outside or from
No.
internal.
And that's another.
That's still in the investigation. Still
That's
going
another
on.
question also, right? And that people were asking me today in another interview is like, well, how do you miss a person walking across the lawn with a rifle? How do we know he was walking across the lawn with a
Witnesses
rifle?
aren't, that's a good point, because witnesses aren't really saying they saw him walk across anywhere.
No.
They did see him crawling up there
Right.
with the rifle, and he was getting into position, and they're like
He
shouting, I guess,
most
talking.
likely had a bag, something he put it together, or he placed it there before.
That was the exact was
okay.
the example I gave earlier. Is how do we know? Number one,
Okay.
One of the first things I would do if I was in charge of this investigation is who does he know in that building? Does he know anyone?
That's right.
And if he does, did he have access to that building prior to that date?
I know, but I went to Easter Sunday services outside, 1,000 people or more, and there were drones everywhere. To get footage of the Easter services. So how like, are there no drones that someone would see someone crawling up the side of a building? I mean, it just
We don't know
doesn't-
how he got there, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I've seen the video of him, and he wasn't even tactical. He really sucked at it. I mean, he was kind of shuffling and worming his way forward, and people yelled him out. Now, the local law enforcement, they keep saying we told Secret Service. How do you know you told Secret Service? I mean, I really have questions like the guy
But
with the
I have
orange
seen-
hair.
yeah,
He's
I've
gotten
seen-
real popular. He's gotten a lot of airtime. We have to verify his story first. Again, I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying we have to go through the process, the steps.
Right.
We don't just believe whatever people
so
say.
with a lot of these outside perimeter areas, they tend to use local law enforcement to delegate that work to. So that one interviewer, the witness kept saying, we were yelling at the uniformed officer. So when he said uniformed officer, right away I was thinking that's a local.
That's right.
Right. So that was again, we don't know this for a fact, but the impression I'm getting, that was a local law enforcement officer that was outside the perimeter, responsible for that building. Now, again, was he roving? Was he stationary? Right? Did they clear the building? Did they lock it down? How did he gain access? Was he in the building already and hiding, and then popped through the roof hatch? We don't know any of those
Right.
questions,
Right.
answers. Right? So those are the things that we have to look at before we say, how could someone miss someone walking across the lawn with a rifle and then climbing up the building when no one saw him walking across the lawn with a rifle and nobody saw him climb the building? Actually, the
Willie,
side.
have you heard from anyone? One of my questions when I first saw the incident is the sniper, the Secret Service sniper, seemed to already have his sights in the direction of the shooter. Then
Right.
you hear and you
Yeah.
see President Trump go down, and then he gets he pulls back and then re-engages and then takes a great headshot. Good for him. Sends the guy where he belongs, the shooter where he belongs. But it just, what was he? I mean, I've heard people say he could have been looking past a perimeter, a certain area. I mean, an open field with someone on the roof, and I know he was trying to stay, but people on the ground saw him. So I'm thinking about this sniper up here and how many snipers we haven't heard. We
Right.
know for two, and there was a guy with binoculars. They're scanning the area.
Right.
I want to know their line of sight and what
Right.
they could see.
So I spoke with a former Navy SEAL, and he explained to me, and again, I'm hoping all these reports come out. The way the building was shaped,
I heard that,
is
too.
that as he's coming up one side,
You can't see.
They couldn't see on the opposite side
Because it's just over. It would
Yeah.
just be over the line.
Right,
The
right.
ledge.
So
I saw that.
as people
Got it.
kept saying, how could they not see him? They're
Yeah.
looking in that direction. Well, they didn't see him until his head poked out.
Okay,
Yeah.
that answers my line of
Yep,
sight question.
right,
then.
yeah.
But
right.
but getting back to Karen,
good.
and maybe this is all. Maybe we've watched too many movies. But the drone thing seems like a legitimate question because
Right.
it seems like a relatively inexpensive, effective, high visibility way to kind of monitor an area. By the way, is that Hollywood or is that legit? Is that an asset?
No,
That's
it's an asset, and it goes. So this is the thing, and I'm not trying to minimize this at all. I'm just speaking truth. President Trump, legit on paper, right? He's a former president. He's not the Republican nominee yet.
That's right.
Yet, so he actually had a lot more Secret Service assistants than your normal candidate running for president or your normal
Because he's a former president.
Right. So he had the CAT team,
Yep.
right? Counter assault team.
They-
He had the CS team, right? The counter sniper team. He had the emergency what's that? First emergency response team. He had all these teams, and then if you noticed, once he got shot, you had a ton of the protectees, the agents are in protection detail, and then you had a ton of another agents in the protective detail at the Suburban, what they call the limousine, and then you had another ton of the emergency response team were the ones in black.
And the heavily armed, yeah, they came
Right.
out with ARs,
Yeah, I
with,
saw that.
with
That's the
long
equivalent
rifles.
to like the SWAT team.
Yeah.
Right. And then you had the CAT team, which were the camo with the long rifles and the helmets, and you had a ton of those. So he had a lot. Let me tell you something. I keep telling people, it's not that he didn't have enough. It says that they didn't place him in the correct location. Interesting.
Yeah.
Had you just taken a few of those individuals and placed them on the roof,
Yep.
then that person would have had a ground game, which he would have a huge disadvantage. Because everyone knows that when you're above,
Yep.
you have a better
That's right.
advantage over everyone else down low. So had they put someone in that rooftop, then that person still may have tried, but he would have been on the ground.
So it
Or,
sounds from
or
your
at least sanitize the ground going into the building.
Fair enough, but it sounds like from both of your description of the events, there's no way that the United States Secret Service emerges from this unscathed.
No.
In a sense
No,
that
they don't.
then it becomes a roof question, then it becomes a pre-preparedness question, then it becomes the right types of assets question, whatever. And in the distance, the overall distance, should that have been up outside your perimeter? I mean, you guys think maybe you expand your perimeter? I don't know, but it seems like I don't see how. I hate to use the
You
word
know,
heads.
Look, it's a very simple question to answer.
Yeah.
The primary responsibility of the Secret Service is to protect the
principal.
president from any harm. That didn't happen. So that failed. Yes, it wasn't a fatal shot, thank God. And I think it was because of God's intervention that it wasn't a fatal shot.
No doubt. No.
Because let me tell you, and I say this, and Nico knows my heart. I love first responders and law enforcement, but Secret Service didn't do anything that saved the president's
I
life
agree
in
with
that
that.
round. Nothing. It was all God's intervention.
Truly.
All that's all it was. Now, yes, they responded appropriately. They got to him quickly. They got on top of him. They stayed on top. People were wondering, why didn't they get him out fast enough? No, you got to
gotta
stay on top
shield
of him
him.
because you don't know there's another shooter.
That's right.
Right. So once they confirmed two things.
Yeah, they said shooters down.
No, but
that could be.
Willie brought something up really important. 'Cause this is where I was listening to some people, and I I have an opinion like everybody else. I've been around a lot of law enforcement. I've done a lot of training because when I was DA, we had a lot of, I was that principal. That's what you're called, the principal or the asset. That I gave Willie always a headache. If we were in a parade, Nico, let's go this way. No, I want to do this. I want to shake hands. I want to do this. Oh shit! So when people, why didn't you whisk? First of all, Donald Trump's a big dude, and no one's gonna whisk. No one's gonna whisk him off. And then if you notice, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Willie, those stairs were you're not gonna whisk him down those stairs.
No.
So when everyone said, why didn't they get him out? Reagan's situation was different. Reagan was going from a building to a car. He was already on a sidewalk right near the car. They shoved him in and they blocked him. This was different. The people around him, the agents around him, created a shield. That's exactly what they were supposed to do. Now, there's criticism. Every picture that someone took could have been a secondary shooter. Got it. They knew the primary shooter was down. But when you have a principal that's a pain in the ass, and I know I was a pain in the ass to Willie and the guys, because they're like, man, I could take care of myself, but I can't watch around me 360 degrees. 365. So I had to rely on them, but I did things differently. When you have a principal, there's always going to be a tension between the asset, the principal, and the detail. Always. And so, what are you going to do? Just yank them? I mean, you're just not going to do that.
There does seem to be a disconnect between because you can hear audibly what they're saying.
Right.
I mean, there's commands. They're huddling. I do wonder why there's a woman who's 5'5" shielding a 6'3" gentleman.
We'll talk about
setting that aside.
We'll
You hear somebody say, and maybe it's the officer in charge, move, and nothing happens.
Right.
And so. What's up with that? Is that back to this complexity of we got a really big dude and he's looking for his shoes?
If he doesn't move on his own, George, maybe you have. I don't know, but I've picked up dead weight before, and I know Willie has too in his training. It's crazy to pick up dead weight, and you probably know that. And so without the president's help, they're using him, and he's more of a target. So they did the right thing in that specific scenario. Every scenario is different. Willie can tell you, to shield him. And they're talking in their ears. So they knew that the primary shooter was down. Now, granted, could there have been a secondary and a third shooter? Of course there could have been. But by that time, the different teams had come out and surrounded the stage.
The reason I'm asking Nico, though, but I want to go just a little beyond that and maybe ask Willie the same question. They're saying move, nothing happens. Okay, so they identified the primary shooter. I mean, I don't know what he's using, but it's going to go through a body. So you don't want to stay there. You want to move. Well, so that's a shield, but that's not really an adequate shield, is it? I mean,
right. Well, so what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of that part of the stage is also bulletproof. So to stay down with those rafters up and they're bulletproof is safer than standing up and trying to shuffle off a narrow stage. To Nico's point, the agents hate those stages.
Yeah, that's a great point. We don't have that kind of perspective there.
The agents hate those stages. Let me tell you, when you talk to the agents, they can't. They're very narrow, and the
stairs
steeps are so steep, and they complain about them. But remember, agents don't call the shots; it's the staffers, and people don't understand that. So you have staffers that belong to the president that don't have any law enforcement experience. Yep. All their things about aesthetics and how things
optics.
look. Yep. Right. And so the agents their hands are tied when they make recommendations of we need a little bit more of a ramp style where we can kind of run up and run down. So to get someone off that stage immediately, it's impossible. And you got to understand, and Nico did a very good point, President Trump is wired different, right? Look, how many people do you know they're going to give a damn about their shoes?
Yeah. But
right?
you mentioned something.
Let me get my shoes, he says.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So and I told this, we had this conversation. In the perfect world, in a situation like that, when you do stand them up, one of the agent's hands go to the backside of the neck, and you pull them down to minimize the size of the target.
Sure.
And everyone now is elevated, right, taller. For example, the 5-foot female. Well, had they were able to buckle him down and lower him, then now you have a good wall around.
Got it.
No one's going to push Trump's head.
No one's going to push Trump's head.
stopped
And then he says, wait. And then he cracks through
But one thing I would have done, George and Willie, you have to think about footwear. I would have suggested you can't wear slip-on shoes, President Trump. You got to wear tie-ups. You got to wear lace-ups. You got to wear shoes, because if we have to get you out, you can't be tripping over your shoes. You running in socks is different than you in shoes. And there's even an argument to say, if depending on your environment, you have to wear a different type of shoes. Maybe nothing with any leather on the bottom, patent leather, things that can slip. You got to think about all that stuff. You're dealing with a principal who's 78 years old, who's a bigger principal, who's a bigger asset. Now, if you're taking care of Tattoo from Fantasy
Right.
Island,
Right.
then you put him under your armpit and you run off the stage. It's not that way. And then you have to Willie's point. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to physically fight their principal? Maybe they do. If they're taking shots, they're not moving. They're gonna shield themselves because they're all wearing vests. They're wearing vests, and Trump was probably wearing a vest, and that's why he went for the head.
So from a tactical management, you think they did pretty much everything they could
That portion,
do?
don't you
I
think, Willie?
I think after the fact, they did the best they could.
Okay.
Right.
Even to the point, if you notice, if you slow the video down when he's getting in the limo and he stands up and he does that one more
time.
If you look closely, there's an agent's hand goes behind right below his
saw
neckline
that.
and pushes him.
I saw that. Yeah.
So it's almost that agent's like, enough, right? Like,
Screw
okay,
this shit.
now you're going to get in here and
Yeah.
I'm going to push you in here because
Yeah.
because that elevation
Sure.
of him standing up above everyone
Is an invitation.
Yeah, George. You guys. We talked about this off air before we started. It was a millimeter. I saw the analysis. Literally, when Trump is doing this,
you could see it.
and you see it. You see him do this. It's just you think is just an innocent tilt, and that's what he went from the back of his head, under his ear. It hit his ear. I mean, that right there. Now that, to Willie's point,
Well, you can
That
see
is-
it. And
that's
it's a
the grace of
legitimate
God.
picture. I think it was the AP who shot the picture. You could literally see
The bullet.
I still want to
what
know if
they
there's any
perceive
bullet
to be a
holes.
bullet around
what it
them.
is, it's not the actual round.
The residual vapor of it,
it's
maybe?
the vape because the humidity it leaves that line.
Yeah.
It's like a plane, right? It's flying.
So that it's gone. So
oh
it's
yeah,
just-
that round is way ahead of that.
It's
line.
basically
Yeah,
a
the
jet
vape.
trail from
Right.
around. Yeah.
But really, I want to know if there's any holes in any vests,
Yeah.
in any jackets. You know, I mean, we don't know yet. We know that in Trump, to Willie's point, if the agents have any holes, any bullets, any rounds in their vests or jackets or legs, they weren't hit. It was God's grace and Trump's going down because there was shots after that initial 2 shots. It's
Right.
those initial 2 shots.
Sure.
Then he goes down. So he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
He went down. It didn't look like he was responding. The agents were right behind it. Those guys jumped on him. It was a second behind. I mean, they're off the stage. They jumped on the stage and they followed him.
I mean,
Well,
everybody responded, it seems like, as fast as humanly possible.
Right.
Trump
At that
heard the
portion,
shots, then does this. I think it dawns on them, holy crap, they're
shit,
shooting at me. And then he decides to get down because it was an instant.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you just got to.
Well, and you know that
gotta be realistic.
You know the other 3 rounds went somewhere because they hit and 3 other people, innocent people, and killed one of them. And so you know those rounds went and hit another individual.
So this is trending, and I want to call bullshit on it if that's what we need to do. But it's gotten a lot of legs, and it hasn't been confirmed or deconfirmed one way or the other. But I'd like you to comment on it. My name is Jonathan Willis. I'm the officer in the famous photo of the 2 snipers on the roof at Trump's rally, and then there's a picture that we've seen. I came here to inform the public that I had the assassin in my sights for at least 3 minutes, but the head of the Secret Service refused to give the order to take out the perp. 100% the top brass prevented me from killing the assassin before he took the shots at President Trump. Does that sound like it could be legit?
Okay, so if they change policy,
Which is a shitty way to ask the question, I realize.
right. If they change policy, which could have been maybe possible, but the CS team, the counter sniper team, is one of the units that does not need authority to take a threat out. Historically, right? Now we have that new director that
Yeah, it's kind of
people
it's
don't
kind of a
like.
big deal. Yeah.
Wow.
So it'd be interesting to see when they do their congressional hearings
Yeah.
and they look at their policies if that has changed and they do need authority. I can't imagine
I can't either.
that to protect the president of the United States,
Or
that you would
former
need
president.
approval to take out something you perceive
Yeah,
as a
no
threat.
kidding. No
Somebody
kidding.
with a gun,
I-
a long gun.
I just can't imagine that. And if that's the case, then
That needs to change.
yeah.
And if our enemies are watching, even foreign adversaries, that is kind of a big deal. I mean, to
Right.
have that
Well, I
kind of
could-
kink in the chain of
Can you-
command at a moment
think
like
about
that.
that. If that was the case, and I'm just thinking off the cuff, think about that. You would set up multiple assailants to attack
Yeah.
at the same time, and they're waiting for approval. And I got in my sights. Hello. And how can you respond to each? How can the SAC respond to every one of them, or the incident commander respond to every one of them? You're just not going to do it. I hope that's not the case.
I can't imagine.
Yes,
I really
Jeff?
can't. And again, if that is a policy, then it's going to be exposed, and somebody needs to be held accountable for that.
Wow.
What about DHS? I mean, incompetence is what I feel like is the word that sticks out to me is
That begs the question of authority structure. And maybe you guys know, and I'm sure you do. The Secret Service, as a law enforcement entity, reports up through what? Department of Homeland Security?
Yes.
Does it ultimately through Mayorkas?
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness he and Trump are so close. So see, this is even as I say that, and this gets in the other part of the show, which is how the hell did we get here? Yeah. I mean, we actually have to sit here, Willie, and wonder.
Well, you know,
wonder.
and this is
Golly.
going to go probably down a different rabbit hole, right? But this is where it goes that we involve politics into our law enforcement, into public safety. Yeah. And every time you do that, you screw it up.
That's right.
Because what happens when you do that is you start to lead by emotion and feelings and what doesn't look right. And well, screw that, right?
Man.
I mean, no one said that enforcing the law is going to look pretty. No one said that, right? It's not. And you can't expect that. Man. But because of the optics of the outcome of the event, then people focus on that one video shot, right? Or the outcome instead of asking, what was the cause of it? What caused the officers even have to be there? What caused, the sniper to have to blow the guy's head off? So a lot of this falling apart of law enforcement has a lot to do with our elected officials that are telling our law enforcement how to respond. Right. Our elected officials telling our chiefs of police, our SACs, how to respond and how to do their job when they don't know what the hell they're doing to begin with. I mean, look, our elected officials, especially here locally, their job is to set budgets for the city, right, and fix potholes and sidewalks and stuff like that. Not to tell our law enforcement or first responders how to do their job.
That's right.
It's not.
It drove me apeshit when I was in office, and Willie and I used to have to deal with this. And and of course, every case came to us, and we set up a situation where we were going to figure it out early on. We weren't going to send every case to the grand jury. I didn't need a grand jury as cover. We were going to make an assessment. Proverbs says that wisdom is found in the counsel of many. We had a system inside our office. When we're analyzing capital murder cases, I set up a system, and then also officer-involved shootings. We did the same thing. And we brought our law enforcement partners in. We were very proactive in talking and teaching and talking to them about the law, what the legal advice was, and then they go set policy based on that. And then Willie's experience, and it was that conduit with us, and there was an open door. And so it was just practical, proactive law enforcement. And if somebody was a good shoot, guess what? We tried to do that investigation. They approached Willie and said, "Hey, can you talk to Nico about? Man, we're on the bench for a year, 2 years, side jobs." And I said, "Well, look, let's do an analysis." We started a law enforcement integrity unit, and it was a truth-finding mission. And said, "Okay, if it was a good shoot after a thorough investigation, right, Willie? We got them back on there. We want a good officer back on the street. If they did something wrong or abused their position or authority or did something we thought was illegal, then guess what? They had hell to pay with us because we were going to hold them accountable. Nobody's above the law, but nobody's below the law." And that's the way. That was the culture. Lady Justice truly had a blindfold when we were there. But that's, to your point, Willie, that's not what's happening today. No. And people are scared as shit. Yeah. And you have law enforcement officers after they're sitting in parking saying, "I ain't doing crap. I'm afraid that I'm going to get prosecuted." I mean, our office represents a lot of law enforcement officers that, in my opinion, a lot of them are wrongfully accused because they were just doing their job. Law enforcement is dirty business. It just is. You're dealing with a very interesting area of society. There's no sanitized way to fight. There's no nice way to fight. There's a legal way to fight. There's a proper way to fight, but there's no nice way to fight.
You'd agree with that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a messy business, but there's rules.
Right. There's rules of engagement.
There's rules of engagement.
But what I'm saying, so tell me the rule of how to stop you from punching me. Do I slap you, or do I poke your eyes, or do I punch you in the fucking nose and hopefully you stop? It's the last one. It depends on the circumstance. Now, I don't punch you if you yell at me, and I don't shoot you if you try to punch me. You have to meet force with the appropriate force, and so that's the use of force and use of deadly force, and then there's a standard in the law about that. But to Willie's point, sorry for the long explanation, but I'm passionate about this because we represent a lot of officers that are wrongfully charged, and then many of them get acquitted or get put back on, and then they're like, "I ain't doing that shit again." And either number one, we lose a good law enforcement officer because they don't want to go back into the profession, or number two, they go and they just park and they just wait out their time. I'll respond to a call, but I'm not going to be proactive. Right. And then we wonder why our cities.
Just because President Trump got shot and we now see the results of these new approaches to law enforcement, I mean, are things going to change after this happened?
I hope so, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what we pray for, is that it's starting to open the eyes, and it could be sound bites from both parties. I don't know, but they're talking about unity now. And again, this happens a lot, right?
But yesterday it was Hitler, and today it's unity.
Right. Exactly. It's a sound bite, right? It's like a fad, right? Bell bottoms versus Converse and all that kind of crap, right? It's just whatever's the cool thing to say right now that we're going to get attention, let's say it. That's the big problem, right? And that's the big question: are they sincere about this? And let me tell you, they need to be sincere, because bad guys don't give a shit who you vote for.
Amen.
They don't care who you pray to. They don't care who you sleep with. They see you as an opportunity, and they're going to victimize you.
Get it, Drew.
People need to wake the hell up and understand that. They keep mixing politics with
What a
public
good
safety,
point.
and they're going to screw it up every freaking time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. That's exactly right, Willie. There's a
Very good
comment.
point.
I believe it was a lone wolf trying to prove his accuracy. Remember, they said the kid was being bullied because of his accuracy in school and probably some built-up anger and animosity. Maybe. I mean, that could be true. We just don't know yet. And look, and sometimes I have to pull either Saulo back or some of us in this room back, and I just say, look, guys, there's got to be a process that we get to our conclusion. Once we get to a conclusion, I have strong opinions about things, but we got to get there. It's my opinion. We got to get there the right way. We have to have due process.
But just as law enforcement is hesitant to do their jobs, don't you think it's also continuously in the news that this guy told somebody he was going to shoot the president, and he has had a history of this, and nobody reports that either?
Well, let me tell you, it happens all the time, though.
Yeah.
This is what I find very interesting, because we've done investigations, especially with the Secret Service. We had the cyber unit, which we actually brought to the DA's office when we were there. We had our own cyber unit that did forensics on phones and computers and everything else. What we find interesting is some of these active shooters, right? Some of these school shooters, they post about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They post about
Yes.
it. And guess what happens? Not a damn thing.
Right,
But let me tell you
right.
something. Again, this is going politics into public safety. But if you say something that doesn't fit the agenda of whoever's running Facebook, they block you, right? Yeah. And they disable your Facebook and put you in Facebook jail.
Yeah.
But yet
Yeah.
they're not focusing on these people who are doing these threats on these schools. Again, just our system is broken. And again, like Nico said, Lady Justice now is like this the whole time.
Yes.
They're peeking to find out what skin color is the suspect, how much money do they have, what is their background, what's their history, were they abused, did they have a high school education?
Yeah.
They're selecting who they want to punish and how they're going to do
fit
that.
the profile
Exactly.
of who they want.
Look, we
Right.
have the penal code and the CCP for a reason, right? And it's the words in there. The words are in there on if you commit this crime, these are the potential punishments. And now we're not even looking at that.
Yeah, I've warned against that, against politics getting into public safety
You have.
into the justice system, and we're seeing that now. Look, I'm going to say this. Governor Shapiro, I texted you guys this. I got to say it because I believe he's a Democrat,
Yes.
right? I think that guy did an amazing press conference. He honored the daddy that passed away, the husband and dad that passed away. He invoked prayer at least twice. He said, "Please join my wife and I in praying." He was calm. He wanted to lower the temperature. He was deliberate. His demeanor was, in my opinion, as close to perfect as you're going to get. He honored the man who passed away. He spoke for the family. The family trusted an elected official. He said, "You know what? Let me shelf my tribe's label right now. Forget the Democrat tribe for now." Remember, I talk about tribalism all the time. Let's forget the tribe. Right now, I'm going to talk about, I am a steward. That's what a governor is, and that's what a mayor is. That's what a DA is. That's what this county commissioner is. They're stewards of this trust that the citizens have given to him. And he spoke for the family.
All
And-
citizens.
That's amazing.
All citizens, but he
That's
spoke for the
amazing.
family of the person who passed.
Yeah.
And he said, I forgot his name. He said he was
Corey, somebody look.
he was an
Company.
ardent supporter of the former president. Now, and you think in his party side,
Yeah.
they was like, don't say that shit. I mean, look at CNN. We'll talk about CNN in a second. I really hope they shut down.
Wow.
I hope they shut
Yeah.
down. I mean that with every ounce of my body, because just the bullshit that they put out there. Call balls and strikes. Can we just shelf that? Be a true journalist. Report what you see, and that's it. And let's stop this vitriol. And again, we call out the Republicans too.
Yeah.
You know that, really does too, because I'm a Christ follower. The truth matters to us. But he did a wonderful job. Governor Shapiro, from what I saw today, is an asset to that state. I mean, I can see why he was voted in, and because this is when you find out someone's true character. You give him power or problems. He used his power and this horrific problem to do the right thing. He honored a family that obviously does not support him politically, right? He invoked a faith that he obviously believes in, that his party doesn't accept as much as the other side, but he didn't care. He said, look, this is a time to pray, not to send your well wishes. He said prayer. He just impressed the shit out of me. I was very impressed by Governor Shapiro.
I can't disagree. What a model.
Yes.
I hope that's infectious.
But what about locally,
I'm
George?
skeptical.
Did anybody see our local official by midday? I don't know. So I want to be fair. By midday, I didn't see one Democrat local official that said, "Let's pray for President Trump, for former President Trump. Let's say thankful. Let's be thankful that he's okay, and let's try to lower the temperature."
No, see, this
Did
is
anybody? Has anybody
no,
seen that? Please, someone
of course
comment.
not.
Because I want to correct it.
This is part of the. This is a big problem, and I don't like Willie. I got a real problem with the whole both sides way to argue. Well, both sides are. Both sides are sort of non-committal. Just say it like it is. Yes, of course we have crazy sons of bitches on the political right. They exist. But as I always say, Willie, the reality is that they don't have political power right now. We don't have major organizations in Washington, D.C. We don't have major politicos in Washington, D.C. We don't have anyone that has any kind of prominent role in the Republican Party who's advancing their cause. All of this is coming from the concentrated in power left. And so I think Shapiro is a great model.
He really is,
and I
man.
hope they're
Good for
learning
him.
from him. I saw it too, and I thought it was fantastic.
He was amazing, man. I watched it twice. I watched his body language. I watched his demeanor. I watched his tone. I was looking at his eyes, the way he was. I mean, just it was as close to a perfect handling of a horrific situation as you could have done.
Okay, but so
Close
from a
to.
law enforcement perspective, where's that line where people are exercising free speech, freedom of conscience, constitutionally protected speech, and they're out there and they're just spewing anger at a political opponent. I mean, they're just saying the most horrific things, short of I'm going to pull out a gun and shoot them. Where's the line? How does law enforcement say, okay, that's from a Secret Service perspective, that's crossing the line. We got to go knock on some doors, because that's the environment. It seems to me that's the atmosphere we're in right now, where if you go back, and this is where I put the majority of the blame or the responsibility, we have the President of the United States in speeches, in tweet after tweet after tweet. We have his Democrat congressmen and senators, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries on certain occasions. We have the legacy media. You mentioned CNN, MSNBC, ABC News. I mean, it's truly vitriolic. It's palpable. In one way, shape, manner, or form, they have in some way called for Trump to be taken out. And I've got the tweets. What do they say? I got the
Well, no,
receipts.
with the videos too.
How does law enforcement say, hey, guys, I appreciate that you guys are elected representatives, but you crossed the line. You're in
Cut
my
your
camp
shit,
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so the sad thing is that, when you're talking about specific law enforcement, they report to who?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, they report to those very same elected
Right.
officials, right? Congress and all the way up.
That's awesome.
So it sucks. I mean, it really does. And there's no scales of justice in that, right? Because when we were there, if we received a message that, hey, we received an email or a text or a Facebook post and we feel it's threatening, immediately they were sending agents to the house to knock on the door.
Wow.
Right? But to your point, now we have elected officials that are doing equally or sometimes even worse of what's being said by an ordinary citizen, and it's excused. It's okay.
Okay.
And so not we, but society itself, right? The government is enabling that bad behavior. They're allowing it to happen. And you have those elected officials that are encouraging that bad behavior. Remember when those Republicans were at dining tables and
Yes,
stuff?
yes, of course.
They were saying, go bother them,
Yeah,
right?
maximum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
They're encouraging
So
that behavior.
I want to build on, if I can, for you guys to
Good,
both, because this is where my mind is going on this enabling. Are you enabling it in the sense, I think, I'll just say it, I think you're enabling it in the sense that you're putting a moral imperative. If in fact Trump is Hitler, if in fact Trump is an existential threat to democracy, and I want to pull up, I'm going to pull up a specific statement that President Biden just threw out a couple of days ago. If you're saying that Trump is in fact a fascist, if you're saying that he is the greatest danger to face this country in a long time, then how do you separate that from the moral imperative, the moral responsibility to take the man out? I mean, it's just a constant drumbeat. I don't know how we all just play stupid. And if you're doing tactical analysis at the highest levels of law enforcement, Secret Service, and you're Trump's detail. Now, how do you not go back to Mayorkas and say, hey man, this is getting real hot? I mean, this isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. Are those kinds of conversations had, or do you just sort of wait until it happens and hope for the best? Like,
Well, the problem you have is nobody wants to speak up. Nobody wants to have that conversation because of the retaliation.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the retaliation is either demotion or a removal of position or transfer. I mean, I'm telling you right now, from the federal to the state, law enforcement has changed. People are fear doing their job. Wow. And Nico said it. Nico nailed it. These officers are sitting under trees and they're saying, I'm going to wait till the dispatcher sends me to my call.
Yeah.
I'm going to handle my call and I'm going to go right back and park under that tree. Crime is increasing. Why? Because we don't have officers being proactive anymore. Officers used to drive around looking for crimes being committed before they even get dispatched. That proactive policing is going away. Why? Because it's not worth their job.
and the citizenry wants them
Their
to do
lives.
that. I mean, the average citizen wants that.
Right, they do.
But the
They do.
vocal minority, I mean, this whole defunding the police was ridiculous. I mean, it's all part of the conversation. It's all part of the conversation. The profession of law enforcement is good. I've always said this. Look, there's law enforcement. Look, as a defense attorney, now that I'm back being a defense attorney, I hold the government responsible all the time. Mm-hmm. Our job is to question law enforcement. It's how you do it. They don't get to break the rules. They're not below the law. There's a right way to do it, a wrong way to do things. And sometimes people get tunnel vision and they overreact or whatever. And so our job is to hold them accountable. We did that when we were in office together. I mean, you know, Jay, my law partner now, was initially and started the law enforcement integrity. We have to do these things, but the profession is a good thing. And we have to understand that there's no perfect way to do public safety. We did, you know, with midnight basketball in the old days, and we tried to get more, you know, public safety in and walk in the streets. I love that. I think that actually works, to be honest with you. Nobody wants to do that anymore, but it's a rough job. So, you know, it's like someone running into a building that's on fire. That's a dangerous job. This is running to gunshots. I mean, look at what happened in Florida. Look what's going on in Uvalde. What happened in Uvalde? You have 76 officers parked there. And again, we can talk about, that's not for this podcast, about the analysis and all that's going on, because there's cases pending. But all I'm saying is that is an example that law enforcement officers are afraid to act.
Yeah, I mean, there's hesitation in law enforcement, which gets people killed. Look, when I got in the department, they gave you a gun and a stick. Right, that's it. You know, they gave you a gun.
Not even
and
an
a
asp.
nightstick.
Not even an asp.
Yeah. So now they're like Batman, right, or Batwoman, whatever you want to say, or
Utility belt.
yeah. I mean, you got your baton, you have your taser, you have your pepper spray, you have your gun, you have all these intermediate weapons, and people are hesitant. And what am I supposed to use? What am I authorized to use?
So every single engagement's like a multiple choice exercise.
Yeah, I mean, all that hesitation costs his life.
Yes, people are dead, killed.
And it could cost more so the officer life. We've had more officer involved shootings now with all these intermediate weapons than we did when you just gave me a stick and a gun. Why? A lot of this training, you know, and I know this probably pissed some people off, and I don't care, I'm speaking truth. The leadership of law enforcement, especially here locally, should speak up more. You know, they don't like the chokehold, which I don't like calling it the chokehold. It's a submission hold, right? And look, when I was on the east side talking to some people in there, I asked them, would you rather me put your son to sleep or beat him, pepper spray him, and tase him until he cooperates? Right? And the answer, 99% of the time, was put him to sleep. No injury. Nobody gets hurt. Put them to sleep, we cuff them, we transport.
But they don't train it that way.
They don't train anymore. No. So now you're not allowed to do that. So little by little, they've taken the resources away from law enforcement, teaching them self-defense, true self-defense moves, teaching them how to feel confident when they go out in the streets, confident that they can take somebody, regardless of the size, that they understand how to take someone down. Now, they're not confident. Yeah. So what do? Reach for the gun.
That's right.
I fear for my life. Boom. We have increase in officer-involved shootings. Why? Because of that.
Makes so much sense. Yeah. That does make so much sense. It's like,
yeah, it's not
how bizarre.
People, you know, of course, the other side likes to call it chokehold, right? Because it sounds violent. It's not violent. As a matter of fact, if you see somebody getting pepper spray, tased, and beaten with the stick, it's a lot more violent than somebody going to sleep after a few seconds.
Go to a jiu-jitsu school all over the country. People go to sleep every day.
Yeah.
I mean, how many ambulances are called out to jiu-jitsu schools? It's
0.
just, I mean, not money. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I haven't done the stats.
If you know how to do it, yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
If you know how to do it, it's quick. It's no injuries, and you're done with it.
If I could just springboard back, tie this and the other statement I said earlier together for a moment. I just sent you and Nico a text, and this is the President of the United States on June 28th. Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. For people who are voting for the president, I just want to be honest. There's millions of people that are voting for Joe Biden. I mean, I know he's struggling in the polls, and I don't think I'm shy about my my support for Donald Trump. And so I hope that Trump's lead that he's enjoyed prior to this will just explode. But all that aside, there's millions of people who take that to heart, Nico.
But George, this we have to talk about this Maxine. What's her Maxine? What's her name? The Congresswoman
Maxine
Waters,
yeah.
and Schumer, and all these
Saying
other
they're
people.
going to take Trump down.
Well, but look what
right.
Biden. We got to stop this talk. I mean, but yet if there's metaphor used on the right, on the Republican side or the conservative side, then everybody goes apeshit and loses their minds. But look what Biden said at a fundraiser just recently. Also, I have one job, and that's to beat Donald Trump. Fair, cool. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely certain I'm the best person to be able to do that. Great, I'm cool with that too.
Yep.
So we're done talking about the debate. I'm cool with that. You want to move on? I don't blame him. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye.
Right.
What the hell? What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Now you tell me if a Republican, then the media would have gone apeshit, and that's what's not fair. It's not right. This is when I don't want the media to advocate for a side. Call balls and strikes. Act like you're a UFC announcer. Tell me what's happening. If I couldn't watch it, I want to hear what's happening in the cage. That's what a true journalism is. We've talked about this on the show many times. Back in when this country was first formed, the First Amendment, it's people in power. They didn't have this internet crap and all this other means of communication. So the journalists held people in power accountable. It was to make sure that the citizen was educated and to checkmate that person with power to make sure that they didn't get some syndrome that related to their position. And then let the citizen be informed so they could vote their ass out. That's the purpose of journalism. And that's why I say CNN, I mean this. I hope CNN shuts down. I didn't like them before. And I'm not saying I love Fox or love what all these other, but they're not that. They're not that. And that's a shame.
The good news, Nico, is that the alternative media, YouTube, and a lot of stuff.
Well, that's why it's getting more popular.
But that's the only reason. That is the only reason that's happening.
Well, it's wrong.
But it's everywhere.
No matter who
seems
does
like
it.
It seems like it's grassroots. Look, from the time Trump came on board, you remember, who was it? Madonna.
Yeah.
Threatened to blow up the White House.
Johnny
I'm
Depp.
sure you saw
Johnny
it. It was
Depp.
the women's march for Washington. But it was right after Trump took office. And then you had Kathy Griffin. And she's staging a severed head of President Trump. And yeah, Johnny Depp. But what did he say? He said, when was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
Right.
So from a law enforcement perspective, particularly
That's
U.S.
true. That's a good
Secret
question.
Service around Trump, the president, what's a call to action? What's a legit call to action to say they've crossed the line? We need to pay them a
Well,
visit?
again, I mean, it's all the politics in it. Because let me tell you, if an ordinary citizen posted a picture with Trump's head, they would be arrested, and there would be an investigation. If a regular person posted, "I'm going to assassinate the president," someone's gonna be knocking on the door and taking him and transporting him in for
Or
questioning.
not even the word assassinate, take down.
Wait, am
is
I
what-
misunderstanding or reading what you're saying? Because so if you're a has-been pop star or you're a shitty comedian or a has-been actor, does that put him in some other realm of not ordinary citizen? Are there additional considerations
They're
for
still
that?
celebrity. Yeah.
That's the problem, right? I mean, they put him on a pedestal.
Oh, shit.
They put him on a pedestal. It's a truth, right?
I didn't know that. I mean, seriously, I don't mean
No,
to be
he's
naive.
not saying
but
that's official.
No, I'm just saying
Willie's just
it's
saying
part of the calculation.
They are
Well,
the exceptions.
Right.
They
It's
can
not.
say
It's
what
not.
they want.
It's not. It's not a written
It's
rule.
not in some
That's-
SOP
It's an
somewhere.
unwritten rule. It's
It's
written.
an unwritten rule, right? I mean, and the example is that Johnny Depp made that statement. If an ordinary plumber or electrician or an attorney or a police officer made that same statement,
Yes.
Secret Service would be knocking on the door,
Wow.
asking him to come with them, and they'll be interviewed and probably evaluated for psychological.
Yep.
But Willie, to your point, I mean, you should have seen George. There's some representatives from Colorado, and there's some guy Kenneth Gucker. I'm sure it's probably his last name should be Fucker, not Gucker, but I mean it's Gucker. He's at District 138
Say it.
seat, Republican in CT House in this November, it's Connecticut. He said he's very upset that the shooter missed. I mean, we've lost our minds.
Yeah.
And Representative Steve Woodrow. is
I
who
would
you're-
never wish that on. Not any political opponent I've ever had that wished harm on me. And you know, you were in there with me, and you know some of these bitches just were just immoral and vile. And we defended ourselves. Don't get me wrong, but I don't even I would never wish harm on somebody. First of all, I'm a Christian. I'm gonna have to answer to God for that. And if you already know who they are. You name my top 3 political opponents right now. Name, if any one of them would have called me right now on the phone and need prayer or need help, I'd help them. So would Willie. So would anyone here. Because there's a moral, there's an anchor. In my flesh, I say, fuck them. But in my spirit, there's an anchor. That's the problem. We've lost our moral anchor in this country. And we don't have, the rules of engagement are over. And so to disagree, we have to hate each other. I've said that how many times? That's the standard. That's a ridiculous standard. And then it leads to this commentary. And then you have some nut job in 20-year-old punk that obviously was bullied, and I hate that shit. And that's why I believe in self-defense and being kind to people and trying to build people up. But that's another story. But however he got there, he got there. I want to know if he's on SSRI drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressant drugs. I want to know that. I want to know how he got these weapons. I heard his uncle said that they don't talk to the family anymore. I want to know what his parents do. I want to know if his parents have any connection to the military or to the government. I want to know if they have connections to that building, to Willie's point. There's so many questions from an investigatory standpoint. If we were prosecuting this case, because that doesn't mean that there's not other people that don't need to be prosecuted. The shooter's dead. Thank God. But that doesn't mean that there's not a team of people or a group of people.
It goes beyond the partisan stuff. Bottom line.
It should,
There's
and
lots of other issues.
That's why I wish some people would just kind of pause, right? I mean, because it's happening now,
Yep.
right? We have officers that are being accused and judged by court of public opinion. And then we have leadership saying, yeah, shame on them, they did wrong, we're going to hold them accountable, before an investigation even starts, right?
Yeah.
You know, an ordinary citizen, we don't release any evidence in terms of investigate, not even the chief. Very basic information. But when it comes to a law enforcement officer, they're quick to spill, they're guilty, we're going to hold them accountable, this is uncalled for, we're going to fire them. Yeah. And the sad thing is, 2, 3, 4 years later, once the officer probably lost his marriage, lost his house, filed for bankruptcy, then gets exonerated. And then goes to arbitration and gets his job back. And that same chief that crucified him on the podium will not go back to the podium and say, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
They won't say that.
That's happened to Nico. I mean,
They won't say that.
Yeah.
And so again, that goes all the way back to officers not want to be proactive. They don't want to do anything. Bare minimum. Hey, you know, when we got in the department, we used to think, hey, we got to kiss our loved ones every day because you just never know, right? Now these officers tell me we're more concerned about not having a job at the end of the shift. So they did a survey, and you're not going to believe this. And this survey, and I'll send it to y'all to look at. In the survey, I would say 19 or 1,700 participants out of shortly about 2,000, which is unheard of, that much participants.
Yeah, no kidding.
More officers are fear being terminated by administrators than they are being shot in line
How
of
about
duty.
prosecuted?
Prosecuted is the whole being falsely accused of something.
So constantly looking over your shoulder to try to do one of those
And it
dangerous
doesn't mean
jobs
that, it
around.
doesn't mean that law enforcement does what they want. It doesn't mean that. I get frustrated weekly when I see certain individuals, not a whole profession, that abuse their authority or do things wrong.
Brother, this
Just
is what I'm talking-
and that's just common sense. We've lost common
But
sense.
There's zero accountability. Again, I think you were alluding to Stephen Woodrow from Colorado, representative. Quote, the last thing America needed was sympathy for the devil, but here we are.
That's crazy, man.
Okay,
I would
so-
never say
so
that against anybody.
You've got elected officials who create an environment, and it never ends with that. Look at the retort on a tweet that came right back. You have unmasked yourself as an enemy of America and the American people. Time to resign. The next one is, I tell you to go to hell, but you know your way home. And everything after this is 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
So it's never contained in that tweet, is it? It just flourishes like wildfire. It is a grotesque environment. Law enforcement steps into a mess they didn't create. And at the end of the day, they become the bad guys. Right. I mean, I don't know how you stop it except going back to these points of accountability, to our political system. What do you think? Because I want to, if I can, what do you think, or what's the solution? At the end of the day, I know you're a Christian. That matters. I get it.
Yeah.
It matters.
What
to
made
me.
you think that, George?
I love that shirt.
Where'd you
I
get
love
that?
it.
Man, you're very insightful, George Arujo.
Yeah. Well, he could be Hindu. But then small s, God's. No, but it's ultimately a spiritual solution, isn't it? It's got to go deeper than politics, than partisan politics.
Well, like Nico says, you know they've lost their moral compass, right? And how do you come back from that?
Who's they?
All those who are enabling this behavior, all of those who are posting those things and those hate and encouraging it. I mean, look, they all have followers. You don't think that what they say is encouraging bad behavior?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, they're encouraging bad behavior about those statements.
But it's a constitutional republic, Willie. At the end of the day, we put those people in power.
Oh yeah.
So we got to hold
And
up a
that's
mirror to our own face.
Oh
at
no,
some
no.
point.
You nailed it, George. People ask, how do we make a difference? How do we make a difference? How do we make change? Well, go back to the oldest written government document. What is that? Constitution.
No, yeah, in this country.
And what are the first word? What are the first three words? We the people. That is how we make change. We need to get off our asses, and we need to get registered to vote, and we need to hold these people that were supposed to be working for us accountable.
Man, that you know, Willie. There's a phrase that I used to say when we first started this show years ago, and I haven't said it in a while. But there's two phrases that govern everything in my life, and you know this already. But I mean, I'll repeat this: they govern my personal life, my professional life, everything, and spiritual life, everything. And it's in the beginning, God, Genesis 1:1, that He gets to decide what's right and wrong. It's not me, because people will screw it up. I mean, everyone
All
has
the
the right
time.
definition. This relative truth, all this other bullshit. In the beginning, God, and we the people. And the way that we the people worked, at least from our founding fathers' thoughts, is that you had this relationship with God. I mean, these inalienable rights endowed on us by our Creator. There was an acknowledgement that there's someone above us, outside of time, space, and matter. It's not government. Government didn't give you rights. You have inherent rights, inalienable, inseparable, that government didn't give you. Government's job is to protect your rights.
Right.
And here's the thing. Democrats and Republicans believe that. The classical liberal believed that. The classical liberal was the free speech advocate that said, hey, George, I disagree with you passionately. I think you're full of shit and you're an idiot, but I will defend your right to be full of shit and an idiot. And I'm going to fight to the death for you. That was the classical liberal. That's why I can't stand using the word liberal when I really mean leftist. But now that's people have taken over that word, because I still believe there's classical liberals out there. But I'm just saying, but we've lost all that. We don't know our history. Now, it doesn't mean, doesn't mean you have to be a Christian to be an American. I'm not saying that, but we can't ignore the fact that there is some set of engagement rules. There's some set of ideas that our founding fathers believed, imperfect in their ways. Got it, check. Put that in, submit that to evidence. But there's some set of ideas that we gathered around and we huddled around. We know that Benjamin Franklin suggested to fast and pray when the 13 colonies almost said, screw this shit. I don't care about King George. We're not going to get together because this one hated this one, and people do what people do. And Benjamin Franklin said, we need a pause. They took a couple of days, like 3 days, right, George? You're the historian in our group. And they prayed. They prayed and fasted, and they came back together. And we know that because the letters to Abigail Madison,
Abigail Adams?
Adams, thank you, John Adams' wife. He's writing her these wonderful letters that today would be our emails, talking about how they got their shit together, and they prayed, and they prayed on a psalm, and they came together. So that's our found. You don't have to like it, but that was something that girded us together. In God we trust. We put it on our money in 1954 to 56. It was in God we trust. That was so paramount to the foundation of this country. Again, doesn't mean you have to be a Christ follower to be an American, but you got to agree to some rules of engagement. And I think the biblical idea of how you treat your neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Better to serve than to be served, better to give than to receive. Those are pretty good ideas that we can gather around. And we've lost that to Willie's point.
I wonder, though, you're saying all of these people are making comments on social media that are full of hate and violence. And I've talked to several people that say, yes, there was an assassination attempt, but is this going to be the last one? What's going to happen in the future? If people that hate Trump will stop at nothing, what are they doing? What are they going to do different at the convention? I mean, is this something where Trump from now until November is just going to have to stay indoors, be behind bulletproof glass? I mean, how do we move forward?
Well, I mean, this is a great opportunity to redirect. It really is, and to kind of call the nation back to the ideals that founded it and have granted us a lot of national peace. I as Nico was talking, here's what I think. I'm going to just share with you an historical example of the tone that I think something as large as a national convention ought to be able to set for the country. Because, Willie, no amount of law enforcement can stand in a gap if the populace doesn't care about higher principles.
Right.
You can't possibly hire enough cops.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't possibly have enough Secret Service. So at the end of the day, it's got to be a moral, ethical, spiritual answer. The Civil War, 1863, hyper bloody. We're coming up on the Gettysburg. And the U.S. Senate requested of President Abraham Lincoln on March 3rd, 1863, that he designate and set apart a day for national prayer and humiliation.
I remember that.
We want a national, humble spirit that basically says things are completely out of control. We are killing our own. That's not good. And there was just a sense, and this is the United States Senate who went to Lincoln to ask him to designate that. Here are the words of what they wrote. Sincerely believing that no people, however great in numbers and resources or however strong in the justice of their cause, can prosper without his favor. And the congressional minutes have a capitalized H, his favor. And at the same time, deploring the national offenses which have provoked his righteous judgment. Yet encouraged in this day of trouble by the assurances of his word to seek him for succor according to his appointed way through Jesus Christ. The Senate of the United States do hereby request the President of the United States, by his proclamation, to designate and set apart a day for national prayer and humiliation. Lincoln immediately complied with that request and issued with what today has been one of the most famous proclamations in American history, and that was the proclamation of the National Fast Day. We ought to read it, and it's beautiful. Well, that's the tone. He's a former president, Trump, and I'd love to see him.
Well,
because he has it in him.
Don't lose your. Stay on your. I just want to say, Alamo Talk is back. Thank you for Alamo Talk for being here. I know you're here Saturday mornings. I'll address your comment in a second. Elizabeth Shepard. Do you know Elizabeth Shepard?
Sounds familiar.
Well, she made a comment about us. We'll answer it. I mean, I have no. Huh? I don't care if she's a fan or not. I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Right.
I don't remember her.
She'll be all right.
I need to see her. I can't either, but I mean, Salo sent to me. It's fine. Right. But we'll finish your thought. I want to let people know we're going to address people at the right time. Alamo Talk, he doesn't agree with us, obviously, but he follows us on Saturday mornings. We appreciate his comments. We want a discussion, and we'll address his comment. Go back, George. I'm sorry.
What I was going to say is that a national commitment to Judeo-Christian ethic, the Bible, Christianity and Christian principles, veins of those considerations run through our documents. Declaration of Independence, as we said many times on Our Christianity, Willie, is really a philosophical document that basically says, why we're doing what we're doing. Because human beings matter. We're made in the image of God. There should be no such thing as a tyrant that vests in himself unlimited power to exploit other human beings. Hence, the separation of powers. No one person has it within him in any office to have that much power. I love that. They're acknowledging that human beings on their own will centralize power and exploit one another. So the Declaration of Independence says, why? Because we matter, there is a creator. At some point, we're going to have to give an account for how we lived our lives. Yeah. And then there's the Constitution, which you brought up, that actually says, well, if that's true, what kind of jurisprudence, what kind of legal system are we going to have? What kind of boundaries, what kind of fence posts are we going to have to ensure that why document gets implemented in a system, equal justice under the law? And so that's throughout our history. And we often go through the congressional minutes and act throughout it was 1852, 1853, all the way through 1856, congressional declarations of how America is a Christian nation, not in the sense that we make everybody be Christian, but in the sense that our national institutions, and therefore really our national mood, to a great extent, is kind of metered and shaped by our convictions, our Christian convictions. I love that. We've really detached from that. Yeah. And we're seeing the consequences of that.
Right.
And I don't know, unless you have presidents and elected leaders at the national level who have the balls and the gumption to stand out there and say, guys, we've got a problem. We've got to go back to the root. Otherwise, we're just going to be swatting at symptoms. Right. And we're going to be throwing law enforcement under the bus forever. It's never going to end.
But how do you come back from this? And is the question. I mean, how do you come back from this when we're all playing off different rule books?
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. 9/11, I don't know if you heard me say this, Willie, but I always bring this up on the show on Saturday mornings. I remember 9/12. 9/12, there was no Republicans or Democrats. Everybody had a flag. We were all together because we were attacked. If we don't think we're inviting more violence against us, our enemies are watching. They're watching. You don't think that they want to take place for being the world leader and they want to take us down and invade and take over? And they like, hey, you guys are like Rome. You dumb dicks can't learn from history.
Right.
Rome wasn't defeated from the outside. It imploded from within. And so Alamo Talk says this, this was a sad day, but Trump's rhetoric is filled with violence. Okay, well, I mean, we got to back that up, Alamo Talk. The Hindu, and by the way, real quick, he obviously has selective memory because, I mean, I've busted Trump. We criticize Trump all the time on the show. When there's something we don't agree with, we criticize, and there's times I've gotten passionately critical of him. And when he does something right, we compliment. And I do that on whoever it is, whether it's Democrat or Republican. But the Hindus would say it's karma. Well, that's fine, but we don't believe in karma, and neither probably do you, Alamo Talk. But where was the outrage when he made fun of Nancy Pelosi's husband being assaulted? I didn't hear about that. Show us where that happened. Or when he said after a school shooting to, quote unquote, get over it. Funny how y'all pick and choose when to get upset. I don't think I do. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. You got to prove. You got to back that up, brother.
Absolutely
Yeah,
factually untrue.
Yeah.
And cite sources, please. I mean, everything we're saying, we're going back to what people are actually saying. We're giving you the dates. We're telling you where the documents come from. How about you do the same thing?
Yeah,
And it won't
and
engage.
then Elizabeth Shepard, it's a personal thing, so we're not going to address it on the show. But I mean, I'm happy to talk if you do a private. If you do, you can read that, Willie, if you get a chance. But you want to do a private number, I'll call you because I'm not being disrespectful, Elizabeth. I can't place a name with your name, a face with your name, but I'm happy to talk to you. I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't know. So there's a lot we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the Secret Service, how they the advanced team, the basic package going in. What resource did he have? Willie brought up a good point about him. He's going to be the official candidate this week. Something that I thought about is like, man, can you imagine? I mean, I've been in awe today of how literally a millimeter tilt completely changed, and I believe it was God's grace.
Changed everything.
Yeah.
Today would have been a different day. This country would be a different country. I can't even fathom where our country would be today and with the future. And think about this. Not just logistically, there's no, as a Republican candidate not being there, that's secondary. There's not a vice president candidate yet, so how does that work out? Then, Melania made a very gracious statement about how she knew how close that their life would have been changed forever. I understand, and you guys know this, and Willie knows this all too well. I know the new normal. The thing I've been thinking about today is that deceased man's family. I mean, and how the story of him covering his family. He covered he was a firefighting chief. Yeah. He covered his like a daddy does, like a true husband and daddy does. I always say when the responsibility of leading a family and servant leadership, if there's someone that has to be cold, it's the husband, it's the daddy. If there's someone that has to go hungry, it's the husband or the daddy. Yeah. And if there's someone who has to give their life, it's the husband or the daddy. Right. And that man, I mean, and that's again, Governor Shapiro honored him and did a wonderful job today, Governor Shapiro. And that man is a hero for his family, and it just breaks my heart for them because they're going to have an empty chair this coming Christmas and Thanksgiving forever, and those kids have to grow up without their daddy. Now, God's grace can cover that. I get it. I understand that. I'm a Christian too, and when my brother was murdered, I mean, you know how the Lord has used that over the years, but it just breaks my heart that this man's going to a political. I wouldn't want that on the Democrat side. I don't want anybody to feel afraid to go support your candidate. Do it with respect. Do it with passion. Do it with respect and passion, and go out and advocate. Try to persuade each other. Right. I mean, Willie, we set this country up in a way of persuasion. It's not force and violence. This whole Antifa, whether it's right, left, I don't give a shit who's doing it. Whoever's forcing is being violent, not self-defense. I'm talking about violent, and I can't stand bullies. Bullying and cancel culture and all this other bullshit and censorship. Speak your mind. You've got to speak your mind. Come to the arena with your idea. Let's spar. Let's do it respectfully. Persuade each other. Let the best ideas win, and let the people vote. That's it. That's our country.
Lisa made a comment that I wanted to read and maybe get your comments on. She said Biden did nothing to unite the country in his speech today. He just took advantage of the camera time to highlight supposed violent acts against left-leaning people when he could have balanced in part of his speech.
Lisa, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I listened to this latest speech. I don't know why this is more of just, if you're going to read a teleprompter, and there's speeches you read the teleprompter, and when you're addressing the nation, I'm not offended that any president, but they have cameras that are teleprompters and the cameras behind it. I don't know why they had the teleprompter up here and the camera here.
It's weird, man.
But that's just me being in politics. You work those things out, and or at least have the teleprompter underneath the camera. Not all that.
Lens in the TV almost spot on.
Well, they're behind it. They have some behind it. You get some news stations. But he did say, let's lower the rhetoric. He did say that. Now, what I wish he would have done is taken responsibility for some of the rhetoric and showed some humility and say, we all get passionate, we all get involved. At no point did I ever intend for any violence. And I know I've said some things.
See, that's exactly
that's a different,
right.
that's a repentant
Now,
heart.
And I think
Yeah.
that's maybe what she's getting at. Not one time in his speech, not one time did he acknowledge that the Democrats have taken things too far with
he's
the
not
rhetoric
gonna do
against
that.
Trump. Okay, but that's what you're saying.
But Trump
That we're all
doesn't
flawed.
apologize for shit either. You know that. We criticize him for that.
I know, but Trump's not president.
I know,
And
brother.
this is a
but I'm
different
just trying to say.
situation.
I'm just trying to say.
I'm with you, and
I hold everyone to a same standard.
But a convention's coming up, and Trump should take that tone.
I hope he does.
And
Let's
I
see
really
what
hope he
happens.
does. And I think, apart from that, I don't know how we actually get past this tit for tat. I think it's going to get worse. If this continues on this course, I don't know how it gets better, Willie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I mean, yeah.
You don't defeat evil with evil. You just
Right.
don't, right? Martin Luther King said it best. Christ said it before him. You know, it doesn't mean you don't defend yourself. We're not pacifists. I get that, and no one's claiming you need to be. You defend, but you gotta have civility
No, we've
and
had
decency.
that precedent in the country. Look, Teddy Roosevelt, who was, I mean, the guy is the epitome of conservatism, right? Served 1901 to two-term president. I think left in 1909, succeeded by William Howard Taft. He wrote, "The teachings of the Bible are so interwoven and entwined with our whole civic and social life that it would be literally impossible." Somebody should give him a time machine. That would literally impossible for us to figure to ourselves what that life would be if these teachings were removed. That's a Republican. Fast forward about 10 years to Woodrow Wilson.
And he was.
And nobody's more of a Democrat.
I was going to say,
Right.
Woodrow Wilson was a
America was
Democrat.
born a Christian nation. America was born to exemplify that devotion to the elements of righteousness which are derived from the revelations of Holy Scripture.
That's Woodrow Wilson.
That's a high calling. That says, at the end of the day, with all this bullshit, there's a higher court of appeals, man.
Yeah, man.
And we all best come together regardless of whether Republicans. This is a time like that. I mean, this is a lit fuse.
Any last comments? Anything, Salo? Anything you can send me? George, Jeff, what do you think? Or Willie, you want to say anything?
Did you see the tweet that Patrick Bet-David made last night? Which
No, I
was,
didn't.
Yeah.
The polls are going to skyrocket. He's going to fundraise, record numbers, all this stuff. But
Yeah.
he has to stay alive. It's not. It doesn't matter that the polls go up, and if it's
That's what scares me.
I'll tell you what I'm
What's
praying,
gonna
Karen.
happen?
I'll tell you what I'm praying. I'm praying that this is our rock bottom. I know it's not a true
Yeah,
rock
right.
bottom.
I hope so,
But I
too.
really hope it's a wake up call. You're seeing a lot of people just kind of saying, all right, guys, and maybe it's some of it's self-preservation. Because where does it go from here? Because if you're okay with this, then you're okay with it happening to you.
That's right.
It can't be. I'm not okay with it happening to anybody.
Right.
If there's an evil son of a bitch, then you defend yourself. I defend a lot of people
exactly
that
right.
use deadly force appropriately, whether it's law enforcement or citizens. You have a right not to be a victim. We're not talking about that. We're talking about political discourse. We're talking about buying into the bullshit that you have to hate your opponent to disagree with. You have to hate someone you disagree with. That's insane. Right. We can't do that anymore. And I'm praying against that. And I hope we model it. I have friends and people in our firm, and you guys know this, that there's late night discussions that are heated and passionate, lovingly, and we go back to work the next day fighting for people in court because there's a nucleus core of understanding which the country used to share. I hope we can get back to that. If you're a prayerful person, I can just ask you to pray. I hope you can do that. Pray for our country and then model it. Be courageous. Be firm. Don't be a pushover. Don't be a doormat. Nobody's advocating that, but extend grace.
Right.
Extend grace and then fight when it's appropriate to fight. But then, verbally and fight in the polls and persuade people, all that stuff, and defend yourself if you have to, God forbid. But I'm just saying we need to change the temperature in this country. We have to. I hope we can do that. Willie, any last comments?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I just hope that this is the rock bottom. I hope this is that eye opener where people realize that we're all Americans, right? I mean, people say it as sound bites because it sounds cool at times, but do they really mean it? And I think that this is the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to start. We, the people, are going to hold these elected officials accountable. They represent us, the American people, and run it like a business. I mean, think about it. I mean, in all our businesses that we have, we don't sit there and say, oh, no, you're a Republican or a Democrat.
No.
No. If you're a Democrat, I'm not going to provide service for you. Or you're a Republican, okay. No, we don't. We look at you as a consumer, right? A customer. And what do you want? How can I make my customer happy? What is it that's appealing to them? And obviously you're not going to compromise your work ethics or your morals, but you want to make them happy, right? And that way you have more customers, more clientele. The government doesn't work that way, right? They do whatever they feel they want to do, and they don't care about us consumers out here that are getting impacted by it. And it's interesting, and somebody commented that I'm just a politician. Mm-hmm. I think that's why I've never elected, because I'm not your typical politician.
That's a good thing. That is a good thing.
I don't say the things that people want me to say. I speak truth, and people like it, and some don't, and I don't care. We need to stop looking at political parties, and we need to start looking at people. And what is the best thing that we can do for the American people, and improving the quality of life, and helping them, giving them the opportunities to be successful, and whatever that is, whatever they want to do, as long as it is not, committing crime.
That is an important, very important American historical statement that you just made. If we go back to the founding of the nation, we find that the average length of the state constitution is around 5 pages long. You fast forward to around 1907 when Oklahoma joined the Union, for example, and it had grown to 115 pages. And the founders seem to put this focus on the type of people that we put in office, not the types of laws.
Right.
And we've changed from that. You said at the onset of the program, we got to get off our asses, get more involved, and actually vote, because it's a sacred right. But it's not enough to just vote, right? You've run for office. You know about this game. What advice would you tell people? What do they look for when they're voting for a candidate?
I think. Both sides, when it comes to primary races, both sides of the aisle are screwed up, right? Because on one side, you have to be the far right, far right, and say the right things, or you're a rhino, right? And we're not going to vote you in, right? And on the other side, you got to be that far liberal. You got to be
progressive,
extremely progressive. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. Progressive, right? Or you're not going to make the primary. And then once you make the primary, then you can be who you are, right? Because you need crossover support, which I think is bullshit.
And people go along with it, though.
They do. And I blame the parties. But the problem also is that the amount of people that are voting, look, we have 1.7 million people somewhere
registered voters.
Total people in Bexar County.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
How many people vote for mayor?
And the percentage of participation?
10%.
Right. 10% vote for mayor.
10%.
And then they want to bitch about the ordinances and stuff that go on. Well, don't complain.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the ride, because you didn't do your part.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we need to do.
Only
we need
35% vote in the general. In the November elections.
Right.
That's sad.
It's an embarrassment.
It's terrible.
It really
it's an embarrassment. Then we want to know why we have so much division in our country. Because on the average person, when you're out there actually talking to people, they believe in the unity, right? They believe in opportunity. They believe in helping each other be successful. They believe in that. They want that. They want the success. They want the prosperity. But it's a small percentage that hold the key to who's going to represent them in office.
And you stole my thunder, and that was really sort of my point, and you're helping me to make it. Thank you. And that is that over time, the emphasis on the character of the individual was basically out the window.
Out the window.
And so you see these constitutions get bulky because they're trying to make up for a loss of character with a number of laws. You can't
That's a good
write
point,
enough
George.
fucking laws.
Wow.
You just can't.
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
good.
point.
That's
You
good.
got to have the right individual, and you got to have the right law. If you have the right individual, William Penn
You're
used
gonna
to
make
say
the right laws.
in his argument with John Locke, because John Locke would say, "All you need is you just got to have the right laws."
Yeah.
And William Penn said, and I'm paraphrasing, "What are you smoking, dude? You got to have the right person and the right laws if you're going to maintain this republic." And that's exactly right. And it just seems like the public has to own this at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
We can't just bitch. We got to think about how we're contributing to this.
Did you want to say one last thing, Jeff, or what? Because I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. Hey, guys, look, I don't know what camera I'm looking at, but thanks for joining in for this impromptu. Willie, thanks for being here. Hope you can come back
absolutely. It was
on
honored.
Saturday or whenever you're always welcome back. Just
Thank you.
conversations.
Please.
And we want people that would disagree with us, whether it's Alamo Talk or Elizabeth or whatever. Please give us a number and I'll call you for sure. But like, share, subscribe. Thank you, Sandra.
Yes,
Sorry,
please,
that wasn't
please
for
share
that. But
this video.
thank you though. But let me leave with Andrew Johnson, the 17th president. Listen what he said. I do believe this is the 17th president of the United States. I do believe in Almighty God, and I believe also in the Bible. Let us look forward to the time when we can take the flag of our country and nail it below the cross. Doesn't mean you have to be a Christian to be an American. And there, let it wave as it waved in the olden times. And let us gather around it and inscribe for our motto, liberty and union, one and inseparable, now and forever. and exclaim, Christ first, our country next. Andrew Johnson, 17th
In the
president.
aftermath of the assassination of President Lincoln.
Yes, that was after that. That was after that. This is a big deal. And so I have good friends of mine that do not share my faith. They're either agnostic or atheist or some other faith, but they appreciate the ideals of the Christian faith if they're properly handled. Look, there's some Christians that violate the 11th commandment. What's the 11th commandment, Karen?
Don't be an asshole.
I say don't
I-
be a dick.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay, but that's it.
Paraphrasing, right?
Yeah.
It's in Exodus 20 somewhere. Trust me. But you know, of course, look. I mean, you can be bold, be strong, but be gracious and love people the way Christ loved people. And if you follow the example that Christ set for us, to love your neighbor as yourself,
Yeah.
to serve instead of be served, to give instead of receive, and to be a servant leader that is willing to die and sacrifice for all people. Right. He wasn't partisan. His politics were of heaven. And if you look at biblical principles and ideas, societies are blessed by them. That's all. And so if we can model that, truly model that. Look, he knocked the shit out of the money changers. And he told off the Pharisees in Matthew 23. He was a friend of sinners. He met the woman at the well. He talked to Nicodemus. I mean, I'm fascinated
And
by
at the end
him.
of the day, he died for everyone.
Everyone, both sides, all sides, up and down. So that's it. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining in. Please, if you're a praying person, pray for our country.